Welcome back to the Geopolitics Nexus report for the weeks of the 26th June to the 9th July. Don't forget to like and subscribe. During June, we saw the climax of the conflict between the Wagner mercenary group and the Russian Defense Ministry. The Wagner PMC is a group of mercenaries founded by the Russian oligarch Yevgeny Prigozhin in 2014, with its headquarters in the Russian city of St. Petersburg, and with it mainly consisting of Russians. It has more or less been used as a Russian tool for its geopolitical endeavors. It's been used to metaphorically test the waters for where Russia could get directly involved in. This saw the Wagner PMC be active in conflicts in Mali, the Central African Republic, Syria, Mozambique, Armenia, and Sudan. But most importantly, Ukraine and the war in the Donbass, where Wagner, supported by the recruitment of tens of thousands of prisoners in Russian prisons, was the main force which was able to get anything done in the last couple of months. They played a crucial role in the battle for Soledar and, more importantly, Bahkmut. This was where Wagner was able to thrive, as the Wagner PMC was able to secure the vital city which has been fortified for the last 8 years. But even then, the first signs of the brewing conflict were showing. While people have basically since the start of the war claimed that Russia was about to run out of ammo, the ammo shortages of the Wagner PMC wouldn't be caused by an actual lack of ammo, but by the intentional denial of ammo. At least this is what Wagner leader Prigozhin would claim on numerous occasions through his videos, which have now become famous, where he directly addresses both the Russian Minister of Defense as well as the former commander of all forces in the Ukraine and current commander of their aerospace forces. Following claims of Prigozhin, as a result of this created ammo shortage, the rate of Wagner and Russian deaths increased drastically, as Wagner forces didn't have the capabilities to consistently suppress Ukrainian positions with artillery fire. But following the victory in Bahkmut, the Wagner forces largely withdrew from the front, and the situation looked like it was going to calm down. But it didn't, as soon after it was announced that all non-Russian military forces in Ukraine would be forced to sign a contract with the Russian MOD, which would put them under direct control of the Russian MOD. Besides, the Wagner group, the Akmat force of Ramzan Kadyrov, was also forced to sign the contract, which in contrast they quickly did. But the Wagner force didn't. The final step towards the coup would be another message from Prigozhin, which would be posted in the early hours of June 23rd, where he dropped multiple bombshells, denouncing the Russian narrative, claimed that the Russians had been plundering the Donbass for the last 8 years. Ukraine had apparently not attacked the Russian positions during the same 8 years prior to the war, and the actual goal of the Russian invasion was to install the oligarch Medchenko as the new Ukrainian head of state. On the same day, Prigozhin would declare war on the Russian MOD and the start of the March of Justice. It is important to note that this was not targeted at Putin, but only at the MOD. Wagner forces would quickly mobilize and take the important city of Rostov, the place which stations crucial personnel for the invasion in Ukraine. But they would continue to march, sending multiple convoys to Moscow along the M4 highway in the early hours of the 24th of June. Trucking through the city of Voronezh, where Wagner forces would come into direct conflict with Russian armed forces, ending in the destruction of a Russian helicopter and transport plane. Multiple other helicopters and planes would be destroyed in the later hours. An oil depot was supposedly destroyed by a Wagner AA missile. Wagner forces reportedly managed to reach up to 200 kilometers away from Moscow. Putin would address the nation on June 24th, denouncing the Wagner's actions as treason and vowing to take harsh steps to suppress the rebellion. The rebellion would be ended by a conversation with Lukashenko, who acted as a mediator between Putin and Prigozhin, which would result in Prigozhin stopping the rebellion and heading out to exile in Belarus. The charges against him by the FSB would be annulled later. Prigozhin released a statement defending the uprising. He claimed that its purpose was to save the Wagner and hold accountable incompetent government officials. Prigozhin emphasized that the rebellion did not seek to overthrow the government, but rather respond to the military shelling Wagner troops. He compared Wagner's threats to capture Moscow with the military's failed attempt to capture Kiev. Shortly after Prigozhin's statement, Putin addressed the nation. He condemned the leaders of the rebellion as betrayers, but described Wagner commanders and fighters as patriotic individuals who were deceived and used against their comrades in arms. Putin acknowledged that Russian servicemen were killed by Wagner and referred to them as heroes. He also stated that members of the group who didn't want to become regular contractors could transfer to Belarus. Russian authorities announced on June 27th that they had closed the criminal investigations, dropped the charges against Yevgeny Prigozhin and others involved in the uprising. They also stated that Wagner military equipment would would be transferred to the Russian armed forces. Reports emerged that camps for the Wagner group were being constructed in Belarus, although the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service denied any evidence of such camps. Belarusian President Lukashenko confirmed the arrival of Prigozhin in Belarus and expressed his welcome for him to stay. One recruiter in Volgograd explicitly stated that their operations were unrelated to the defense ministry and that they were continuing to recruit troops in Russia. France has been plagued by constant riots during the last week. Following the death of Nahel Merzak, a 17-year-old boy of Moroccan and Algerian descent, Merzak has been shot during a police stop and search. Merzak had reportedly been speeding on a bus lane in a vehicle with a Polish license plate suspected to be a stolen car. Even after the police stop, Merzak tried to flee and drive at one of the officers. One of the officers thought it was fitting to shoot him as repercussion. The discovery of film cleared up the crime and allowed charges to be levied against the policeman. Riots started shortly after in ghettos in France. Mainly, at first, only the bagnios in Paris, housing projects built between the 1950s and 1970s, inhabited mostly by poor immigrants. The protests quickly spread to other major French urban areas like Marseille and Calais and others. But it didn't just stay in mainland France, but it spread to other French holdings in the Caribbean and South America, for an example. But it didn't stop there, as it spread to French-speaking areas in both Switzerland and Belgium. The 5-day-long riots resulted in the destruction of large parts of French urban areas. The areas most affected, ironically, similar to the George Floyd riots, are the banlieues themselves, the areas where the immigrants live. Well, at first, the response to the riots was too passive, you could say. Later, the mobilization of 45,000 gendarmerie and policemen allowed for the situation to stabilize. The riots left more than 5,000 vehicles burnt out, 1,000 buildings damaged or looted, 250 police stations or gendarmeries attacked, more than 700 officers injured, and some 3,400 people arrested as a massive police presence set out to restore order, with legal systems working tirelessly to arrest and persecute those who looted and destroyed French cities. Israel has launched a major air and ground offensive into the occupied West Bank city of Jenin, marking its largest military operation in the Palestinian territories in years. The Israeli government described the operations as an extensive counter-terrorism effort. The assault began at approximately 1 a.m. on Monday and resulted in the death of at least 8 Palestinians, with another 50 individuals sustaining injuries, including 10 in crucial conditions, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. The offensive involved the deployment of Israeli troops estimated to be between 1,000 and 2,000 soldiers, along with armored bulldozers and snipers. The Palestinian president's spokesperson criticized the offensive, labeling it as a new war crime against our defenseless people. The militant group Hamas, based in Gaza, called on young men in the West Bank to join the fight. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, and the domestic intelligence agency, Shin Bet, released a joint statement indicating that they had targeted a common center in the Jenin refugee camp. Used by local militant groups, images from inside Jenin depicted armed and masked Palestinian fighters on the streets as gun battles and explosions persisted throughout the morning. The joint aerial and ground incursion into the camp represents the first major operation since the 2002 Battle of Jenin during the Second Intifada, which resulted in the deaths of over 50 Palestinians and 23 Israeli soldiers. The recent events have contributed to a rising death toll amongst Palestinians in the West Bank, reaching 133 this year. The region has experienced an escalation in violence over the past year, resulting in one of the worst episodes of bloodshed in nearly 2 decades. The director of the Palestinian Red Crescent Society in Jenin, Mahmoud al-Said, described the situation as an invasion from air and ground. Israeli military bulldozers plowed through narrow streets, reminiscent of previous incursions during the uprising. The Palestinian authorities and Jordan condemned the violence. Protests erupted across the West Bank, including near the city of Ramallah, where a Palestinian man was shot dead in the head by a member of the Israeli army. A general strike was observed throughout the territory, and Israeli air defense systems were put on alert for possible rocket fire from Gaza. The IDF spokesperson, Adam Daniel Hagari, stated that the operation was a focused brigade-sized raid expected to last between 1 and 3 days. Israel expressed no intention to hold ground in the area. The raid aimed to disrupt what Israeli officials referred to as safe haven mindset within the camp, which has been regarded as a breeding ground for armed resistance by Palestinians and terrorism by Israelis. It remains unclear whether the operations will lead to a wider response from Palestinian factions, potentially involving militant groups in the Gaza Strip controlled by Hamas.